Bang, Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, my lovely wife Kara's at work, and today we are talking about top 10 beaters. Now, there are a lot of knives that could be considered a beater, and I've beat on a lot of my knives. I could have did a top 20 beaters, but I was trying to come up with knives that some, like in a different price range, because sometimes when people think of beaters, they think of knives that are very cheap, that are just very tough. So I got some of those, and then also I just did a video of top budget, so if you want to check those out, you can go check those out. So I kind of mixed it up a bit with this, and I pulled out 10 knives that I've really beat the tar out of, and they've really held up pretty good. So first up, I want to talk about the Kershaw Bare Knuckle. What an amazing knife, and I'm going to back it up with the Kershaw Knockout. Both of these I've beat the tar out of. This one, since it has the coating, it's taken a little bit more damage. This one I've done a lot of sharpenings on, but this finish has really held up. You can see the scratches and stuff, but it's really held up just really good. And the lock bar is still in a really good place. I mean, the action is really good. The tip is slightly bent, so that's why it does look off-centered, but it's really not. Actually, it's still centered, but amazing knife. This one is at 100% lockup, but hey, and it looks like it's not rubbing, but I could probably just turn the pivot. Point is, though, is that it is still kicking, even though it is at 100% lockup, and that's from me squeezing, and working with it, but it's still locked up, completely good, rock solid. No play either way. I could probably turn the pivot a little bit and center it up a little bit more. But yeah, there you go. Both of these knives go for about $55 to $65, and then you can get the M390 versions of those knives for under $100. Next knife, Benchmade Reptilian. Now, there are different versions of this. This is the one with the FRN. These go for like $120. They also have the mini grip, which we do have, but I'm not going to pull it out, but it's the exact same knife, just in a very small version. But very good knife. It's S30V FRN, and they do make a G10 version, I think, for like $175 or something like that. But just a really good knife. And I've really beat on this knife, and the blade geometry, I do wish it still had the hollow grind like the original versions did in 154 CM, but it's not bad blade geometry. It's not horrible, it's not the best, but it's a heck of a work knife, and I've really I've really beat on this thing a lot, so I've definitely tested it. Next up, Buck Marksman. Now, I've really beat on this thing. These things are like $110. It is a USA made knife, 154 CM with aluminum. There are different versions of this, but yeah, I've really enjoyed this thing because of its good ergos and blade geometry. It's like 15 thousandths behind the edge, and it takes a wickedly sharp edge. Because it's so thin. And I mean, any knife can take a wicked sharp edge, even ones that are very thick, but it tends to work really good. So very good knife. Next up, this one is the F756. Man, I've beat the tar out of this thing. Right now, kind of has a little bit of a rattle, because I just need to tighten the pivot, not a big deal. But it is getting a little bit of lack rock, but you know what? It's still holding up, and that is from insane hard use. I've been using this thing for about 2 years now, over 2 years. Yeah, about 2 years now, and the first 6 months I had it, I mean, I beat the heck out of it. I was working construction, and I mean, I was doing everything you could imagine with this knife. It's been sharpened a lot. The blade geometry is great for construction work, and it has a really good blade shape. And the G10 is really strong, nice full liners. I mean, it's just a really strong knife. It did come, Ganzos, the Access Lock Ganzos, Not all of them, because I have seen some that aren't as strong, but for the most part, most of them come with a very strong axis lock. So like when you pull this down, it's actually almost too hard. Some people take them apart and they bend the Omega spring a little bit and it weakens it up a little bit. I recommend just flicking it. Just sit there and fidget with it for about a week or two. It'll weaken up and it won't be as bad. Like this one now is about as easy as a Benchmade. So carries really well too. Next up, the CARHARTT Igniter. These also come in a non-serrated blade, so don't look at these VEF serrations as something bad. They do come in just a regular drop point. It is a nice, let me show you, a nice hollow ground blade. Great blade geometry. The blade is not very thick. It's actually pretty thin. It does have it's an assist bar, I guess. It's their type of assist, but it's a bar right there. So it's not going to break like some of the springs on like other assisted knives. So you push this little button in, it pushes the liner over, as you can see, and then you just push up a little bit and it takes over. Very strong kick. And it's a very reliable type of access lock. And you see the liner right there. The blade is so thin, but nice, good, strong lockup. And yeah, I've really beat the tar out of this thing. And these serrations, you can see I've sharpened them probably 3 or 4 times. It's VEF serrations, which are way nastier than regular serrations. Regular serrations don't even work compared to VEF serrations. VEF serrations just, they rip through some stuff. So, and the way the handle design is on this thing, amazing ergos, especially for a knife that's not really big. Very good action. I do like this thing a lot. I almost wanted to get it in a just a regular drop point version because I liked it so much. The only thing I don't like is that you only can have it tip down, and some people that might be a failure, but you know what, it's not really that big of a deal. It still carries good. Next up, the Hogue Ritter. I should have put this with this knife because you can get this one cheaper than the G1020CV version of the Reptilian. Now the thing is that I prefer this blade shape over this one. I like the sheep's foot, I like the hole, especially with the access lock. I do really like the hole, but for 150 bucks you can get the 20CV G10. Great ergos. This thing has fantastic ergos. This thing is just a workhorse. I traded this thing, so I did get it secondary, but it's still really good. I feel like my Omega springs might need to be replaced soon. Not that they're breaking or anything, but they're kind of weak. Like, I feel like when I pull this bar down, it's so easy. It's almost too easy, but it still works good, still nice and strong. I mean, I might need just need some new Omega springs, but workhorse. Very good work knife. Beat the tar out of it. And like I said, I got a secondary. Next up, the Tucson Ts 16 with a fully modification. I did do a regrind on the blade. I did a video on it, and I flame anode the titanium. I do really like this knife as a work knife. The thing is with it is that it's very long. It is a long knife. Let's throw it up against the Reptilian. A lot of people know the Reptilian. You can see how long it is. So it is a long knife, but you can get them for like 40 bucks with the D2. Now they do have S90V versions that are more money, or M390. I don't know if it's M390 or S90V that are a little bit more money, but you still get those relatively cheap because this is one of their old models. Now the one problem with it as just a regular EDC knife is that it's thick behind the edge. It's definitely thick, and that's one reason why I did a regrind on it. Also, I wanted to do a video on it. So basically what I did was I stone washed it. Well, let me back up. I acid etched it, stone washed it, then did a regrind. And I did do a video on it if you want to watch it. It's very cool. It looks good. But I didn't thin it out that much more, and I've sharpened it a lot. Oh yeah, and I cut in a little sharpening choil. Not a finger choil, just a little sharpening choil. But it's thick as a brick. And it works good for a work knife, for something that you want to beat on, because it's not going to be your crazy good slicer. Now it still cuts good, and it's a great blade shape. It kind of reminds me of like a titanium version of a 940, if you know the Benchmade 940. It kind of reminds me of that. But good knife. And it does have pretty good, oh, D10 ball. Good action. Nice heavy blade. So, all right, next up, Civivi Piccaro. Now, I call this a good beater because it's only $50 and it has a stupidly thin edge. I mean, ridiculously thin. Let's look at the two before. Let's see the thickness differences. Ow, look at that. That is a big difference, ain't it? This thing's an insane slicer. And if you want a knife that is just crazy good at cutting, slicing, and like if you need a knife that where what you do, all you'd use your knife for is slicing, this is a good knife. It's a big knife. I mean, look at it. Here, we'll put it up against this one again. This is they're both 9 inches, I think. So, oh no, wait, this one's longer. Wow, I think this must be 8.5 because this is 8 inches. So let's look at them all three of them. What do we got there? Okay, so we got 8, 8.5, 9. Bang. Yeah, it's a big knife, but it carries so good because it's thin. Great ergos and great finger choil. It feels a lot smaller than it is because of how thin the blade is and how good of a slicer it is. The action is really good, and it gives you multiple forms of deployment. You can use the thumb studs, or you can use the hole, which is really cool. Nice, easy access to the liner. Sits in the pocket really good. Just a great full-size knife. If you complain about big knives being too thick behind the edge, this might be the knife for you if you want a nice thin one. Next up, Bestech War Wolf. Now, I almost added this because I just did a video where I had these two knives in there, but I didn't talk too much about them. Now, this one I have used a lot of, but I've mostly used it just for slicing, which is what most knives are used for. This one I've beat on a little bit harder, and you can kind of tell. I think I've resharpened it since then. No, yeah, I got a nice edge on there. Let's get a nice close-up of it. But it's got scratches, and I did get a secondary, which it did have some of these scratches already. But it's got amazing ergos. If you put this in your hand, it just makes sense once you put it in your hand. Like looking at, like when I first seen this, I was like, it's not really for me. Then when somebody sent it to me, and I put it in my hand, I said, wow. Because it's made for a hand. Now, it's not a straight back design, which if you guys know me, you guys know I like a straight back design, but it's got that perfect amount of taper to where it's literally the way your hand forms. And it just sits perfectly the way your hand fits. I mean, it just works. And this blade shape, not the best blade geometry, but good still though, and it does take a nasty edge and it cuts really well, and you get a lot of leverage on that tip. So if you like to use your tip, you know, on your knife, very, very good tip. Nice and centered. This thing is just amazing action. Bestech, man, Bestech does great knives. Now I know I'm kind of going over 10 here. I only got a couple more for you guys, but I couldn't do this video without talking about the Rat 1. The Rat 1 is a hell of a beater. Everybody knows this knife, so I'm not going to speak too much on it. There's a video out there by Blade Brigade New York where he beats the tar off of one of these things, and it actually outlasts this knife. So if you want to check it out, go ahead and check it out. It also outbeat the Spyderco Tenacious, so check it out. Very, very good knife. Yeah, just great action. They're cheap too. They're like, I don't know, 30 bucks. Okay, 2 more, and then I'll finish this up because, like I said, I could pull out a bunch more knives. This is the thing, though, is that I didn't want to take out knives that I've beat on, like just like the past month or two. I wanted to bring out knives that I've really put a beating on. So I can't talk about doing that without talking about this knife, because this knife has taken the heat. And it is still just as strong as the first time I got it. And I did get a secondary too. So I got a secondary and we did some anno work on it. And it is on phosphor bronze and Teflon washers. Stupid smooth. Very nice lockup. And no lock stick ever. You know, it's got the stainless steel lock bar insert, but this thing is just so good. The ergos are fantastic. It has a little bit more of a straight back design. And and it's not perfect straightness, but it does feel straight. And then this groove, I love this shape right there, and especially this depth. So like if you did this exact same shape with a different depth, it's not going to be as good as this. This just has the great width. It just feels so good in the hand. Nice razor, I guess you'd call this a razor shape. I mean, it could be called a sheep's foot, I guess. Let's call it a sheep's foot. Most sheep's foots have a belly, though. And then Wharncliffe's don't have this little angle right there, technically. You can call it whatever you want. It's a badass knife. It's like a razor blade on steroids. And mine's getting thick behind the edge now because I've sharpened it a ton of times. I'm going to have to put in a sharpening notch. You can see where I'm hitting right there. But man, it still takes a nasty edge. It still cuts really good. Nice thick blade stock. And this is a good hell of a worker. Anybody who has this knife knows this is a good knife. All right, last but not least, the Land 910. There are different versions of this that are stainless steel, then they have titanium versions. I have the G10 liner version, and stupid smooth action, amazing. But this thing has probably the best, I'm not going to say the best, but one of the best type of ergos, because it does have the straight back design and it has the exact type of handle I like. I get to choose where I want my fingers, which all the other knives I showed you are amazing ergos too, because you can't have a great beater without it having good ergos. That's not possible. You can't call a knife this is a good beater and it have bad ergos. Now, the worst one out of all of these probably would be this one because it's so thin, but for the most part, it still has good ergos. And it feels good in the hand, but it's not the best. Not compared to all the rest of these knives. But yeah, this thing, very good ergos, 12C27. And yeah, it's just a great, great beater knife. I've beat the tar off of this thing. Let's see if it has a good edge. I believe I put a new edge on it. Oh yeah, this is a nice fresh edge. Looks like I might have to put a new choil in soon. Maybe not. I don't know. It's a good knife though, man. And it's lasted through everything I've put it through. Now the lock bar it's moved, but I expect that with all the work that's been done on it is at about 70% now, but no problem because this is a $25 knife, 25 bucks, and I think it's still centered. Wow, man. And I can just squeeze this thing. I don't even feel the clip. And the clip works really well, too. These are some of my favorite clips. These spring clips like this, they go in and out of the pocket so good. And the thing is that when you're pulling it out of your pocket, you have a little something to grab. But that isn't that big of a deal to me. What I like about it is that you have tension as you're pulling it out. You can actually feel the tension of the clip in your pocket when you're pulling it out. So it's nice and secure. Now, I can think of a lot of great clips, and this is a really good one. So there you go. There's more than 10 beater knives. Like I said, I could have went on and on and on and on. I could have pulled out the Shaman that I've really beat the tar out of, but they're kind of expensive. But this is definitely a great work knife also. I could pull out a lot of good work knives that I've worked with, but I might not be able to consider them a beater. So there you go. Peace.